Have you ever wondered what comes first, changes in behavior or changes in mindset? Stay tuned for an interesting conversation about how to shift your thinking and behavior. Hi, Shannon Waller here, and welcome to Team Success. Someone asked me a fascinating question the other day, and I wanted to give some thought to that and share this with you. And the question was, can you change behavior without changing one's mindset? The short answer to that, I think, is no, or at least not long-term behavior that you would shift. And I actually had this coaching conversation yesterday with a client, and it was really, really fun because one of the things that became really clear for her is that she wanted to change some behavior. She was pretty frustrated with what a lot of her life was about in her leadership role, and she was very focused on the doing. And truthfully, she needed to make a shift to have more of an owner mindset. And once she kind of stepped more fully into that, all of a sudden, a whole series of things became clear that were not otherwise. Now, here's the part of this I love, is that shifting your mindset is actually an almost instantaneous experience. Now, it might take a long time to get there, but truthfully, it doesn't actually take long to actually do it. You know, when you've had a big insight about something, when you've had a circumstance in your life, had you think about things incredibly differently, when you had an awakening or awareness, it just all of a sudden changes everything just in a moment, which is powerful. But again, getting to that point where we shift our mindsets, that's not always easy. So here's how this kind of occurs to me to make it practical. And by the way, I don't normally notice that I need to make a shift in mindset. It actually comes to me through behaviors. So, I don't have a mindset conversation with myself saying, oh, okay, how do I think about this? And how could I be thinking about this? No, it shows up because something isn't working in terms of behavior, in terms of actions that I'm taking. But then, so if I want to change my actions, I actually have to stop. It's like trying to put in place new habits. Unless you have a new way of thinking about yourself, you don't have what it takes. You don't have that fuel to actually change the behavior. So you have to take a step back. And this is true for personal habits and behaviors like health, working out, taking supplements, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, all the way to, when you're working with your team, helping your team make some shifts in terms of their behaviors. It's really key. I love how Dan calls it thinking about your thinking. So your current level of thinking leads to your current behaviors. If you need to shift how you're showing up or the actions that you're taking, you have to stop, think about your thinking, and then come to some new conclusions and some new insights, and those will lead to the new behaviors. Now, where I see this a lot is in people stepping up to higher levels of leadership, just like the example I shared earlier. So when my coaching of the team leader program, people have been really effective doers. They've done certain tasks and certain roles incredibly well, to the point where someone thought, oh my gosh, you are so good. I want to give you more responsibility. I want you to help other people do this particular task or role really, really well. And that shift for people from being the one who's doing it to being the one who's getting it done through other people is tough. And often it's letting go of one trapeze and being willing to fly through space for a little moment until you can grab the next one, which, by the way, is terrifying. It's scary. In our 4Cs growth model, it's having commitment and being willing to go through that phase of courage, which feels terrible. Courage feels crappy, in order to reach a new level of capability, which then creates confidence to go and do it again at a higher level. So it's hard. It's not easy. Not everyone is willing to do it, but the payoffs are huge. Payoffs are amazing, especially if you want to see your life turning out a little bit differently. So this whole, what comes first, the cue for me comes with behavior, because I'm like, oh, I'm not happy that I'm, for instance, not exercising enough, or I'm not happy that lately I've been working extra long hours and saying yes to some things I shouldn't have. I've not had great boundaries, as my husband told me the other day, around my time or some of the things that I'm doing. So I need to think differently about it. I can just try and change what I was doing, but frankly, I would probably fail. I actually need to think about my thinking and step back and have a different perspective on how am I thinking about this? Why am I so easily doing this thing? In my case, it's giving away my time for free and going after hours, etc. How am I thinking about things and how do I need to shift thinking about things? This is personal growth. This is professional growth. It is not easy and it does take courage to do it. There's a couple of circumstances where it's uncomfortable. Sometimes I have to change the way I was operating and I was really comfortable and happy doing the other things, but I'm not going to get where I want to get to. I'm not going to be growing if I don't make some changes. And it's always easier to stay where the track is really smooth, but sometimes that turns into a rut. So it is critical that we actually challenge ourselves and are willing to grow and take feedback. If our team members or our people in our personal life, our friends, our spouses, our families are like, hey, we see you doing this and it's not working for you. Clearly, it's also not working for us. Then you kind of need to think about your thinking. I see this all the time with entrepreneurs who insist on keeping activities that they have far outgrown. Basic and kind of old example is opening the mail. And I know someone who hung on to those activities, a decade past when he should have, because what it meant for him was looking for checks. Now, we process business a little bit differently now, but for him, one of his biggest highlights in his early entrepreneurial career was opening envelopes that had checks in them. That's why he insisted on opening the mail. And he's well past the point where he's counting every single check that comes in. He's now got a system for doing that on a regular basis. It just comes in. But for him, he has an old habit, an old behavior tied to an earlier mindset where things were much more scarce. He was not as successful as he is now. And so he kept that behavior and didn't update, not even upgrade. He didn't update his mindset that now he was successful and he could count checks differently. He could actually have someone else open the mail, put it in the bank, and then look at the dashboard, right? So I see this a lot and it's challenging. Sometimes we have trouble keeping up with ourselves. We have trouble keeping up with our level of success. And it's hard to let go of the old things in order to embrace the new. But it's vital if we're going to grow, if we're going to help our teams grow, if our companies are going to grow, if we're going to reach for new levels of behavior, of success, we need to be able to be willing to think about our thinking. We're really talking about growing here, and it's important to recognize that growth does not come without a sense of fear, uncertainty, and discomfort. We talk about this in our 10X growth model, that if you're willing, at your current level of success, or our past level of success, when we were there, it felt normal. But then we were willing to go through periods of fear, uncertainty, and discomfort to get to this current level of normal, which, by the way, feels completely comfortable, normal, habitual, all the things. But in order to get to a new normal, as Dan talks about, then we actually have to be willing to go through, again, periods of fear, uncertainty, and discomfort. Now, here's what I love about us. What I love is that entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial team leaders, entrepreneurial team members, our nervous systems are a little more cued to growth and to being tolerant of a sense of fear, uncertainty, and discomfort than most people. In fact, I know some entrepreneurs, when I've been talking about this and coaching it, someone put up their hand, they're like, if I'm not always a little scared, if I'm not always a little uncomfortable, then I get worried. I want to be on that little bit of a knife's edge. I want to be challenging myself. He said, complacency and boredom are much scarier for me than feeling that sense of fear, uncertainty, and discomfort you're talking about. And I was like, yes. I completely agree. If we're not kind of scaring ourselves just a little bit, we kind of think something's wrong. I mean, raise your hand for yourself if you're like, oh yeah, if I'm getting too comfortable. Some people wake up at 3 a.m. with things that they're worried about. I know people who wake up at 3 a.m. because they think they're getting bored, and that scares the you-know-what out of them. So this is kind of critical to pay attention. So I just want you to appreciate that your sense of adventure and challenge and openness to new things you haven't done before and to being a little bit, scared, wide-eyed at new things is different than most people. And hopefully you really encourage that within your organization. You don't beat up people when they fail. You're like, oh, okay, You embrace failure. You encourage people to risk and to learn and to grow. After all, that's how you became successful. That's also how your team is going to become successful. So really appreciating that adventuring and risking and trying new things is a natural, normal part of entrepreneurial life, is a great mindset to have that encourages people to get unstuck and to try new things and to know that they're safe to do those things. I think the mindset that failure is okay, it's simply a way to learn. You either are winning or learning. The only time you're failing is when you're not learning. I love that mindset from Dan. So that's a powerful mindset, an entrepreneurial one that we can really encourage for ourselves and for our teams. And it keeps us from getting stuck. The more you also think about your thinking is incredibly useful. I love how EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, really encourages taking clarity breaks. Also, Keith Cunningham in his book, The Road Less Stupid, which is such a fabulous title. He talks about taking these thinking breaks with yourself. You get quiet, you put yourself in a room, no distractions, you have a legal pad and a piece of paper, and you ask yourself questions and you just think. When we take time to reflect at Strategic Coach, we always do the positive focus. This is a way to reflect on your progress. That reflection time is critical. I love in our exercises, almost every single one of them at the bottom has insights and actions. So your insights are thinking about your thinking. So if you're getting frustrated, if you are feeling like you're getting a little bit stuck, if you know you need to make a shift to a new higher level of behavior, of execution, of doing things, but you're not quite sure how to get there, stop, pause. If you haven't taken any free days, please do. They're amazing for actually helping you get clear and not reactive. You can get more creative. And then come back and just do some thinking. Spend some time reflecting. What's working? What's not working? What mindset are you operating of? What's a new mindset that might lead you to those other results that you're looking for? And then you'll find that freedom of thinking that you are looking for. You'll actually open up new possibilities that weren't there before. I know one for me is I always put other people's needs or wants or ways that I can help a little bit ahead of my own time boundaries. I need to make a shift in that regard. I'll keep you posted on how that goes. I know that I want to put a higher priority on my health and exercise especially. So what does that look like? What mindset do I need to have to make this normal? I love how at Coach, we're starting our new Lifetime Extender series. Well, if you've got a long life plan for yourself, looking after your physical body that you're in kind of makes more sense than if you don't have a long life plan. So that's another mindset shift that we can talk about. There's so many. We could spend days just talking about mindsets. So the bottom line here is that mindset really does precede behavior, but often our clues for that we're kind of stuck in a mindset that may not be serving us anymore actually comes from what we're doing and whether or not that's fully as satisfying as it used to be. At least that's true for me, maybe not for everyone else, but I know that my shift in thinking comes from when I'm not happy with how things are going. I see it in the actions, but then I need to backtrack to the mindset. So that's really the message that I wanted to give you today. If something is not working for you, stop, pause, and then start to think about your thinking. And then out of that, especially if you're thinking about it from the mindset perspective, you're able to go, oh, I've been thinking about things this way. If I thought about them that way, then that would drive different behavior. And there, my friends, we have a ton of freedom to think and to do things differently. So I find that exciting. I certainly hope you do too. I hope this conversation has been useful for you. Hope it's been thought-provoking. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know at questions@strategiccoach.com. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, here's to your team success.